It's Deanna from Ribbon Candy Hooking. I am on the move this morning doing a little bit of dyeing, and I thought it might make sense to show you some of the different techniques I'm using right now that are quite simple. So I'll just show you what I've got going, like 4 different things going. Reverse us here, and right here I've got my pan of water going, right? You'd never use dyeing stuff for food. I've got just this dead pan that I only use for dyeing. And in here I've got a steamer basket. This is called a steamer basket. It sits on top and it catches the edge, and I've already dyed these with either old rose or wild rose, and I've got it sitting on top of the steamer, and then from time to time I grab my colors that I'm using for it. I've got my squirt bottles, and I'm using right now mahogany and gold, and doing a little bit of this on top, and then I'll move it back over. And I'm steaming it. The heat is going to set it this way. So I've been doing a bit of that business and this. And then of course I don't have gloves on because I got to be me. I move it over because of course gravity makes it, the colors, I've got some hot pink in there too, want to sink to the bottom. So I keep moving it. And you know, now that I've done that again, I should probably give that a little bit more on top. Just a little bit. I'm just watching that. It's like cooking, right? It's exactly like, I don't really do cooking, but I'm guessing it's exactly like cooking. In here I've got just something I'm dyeing straight. It's the pan with this color in it. This color I think is silver gray or dark gray or seal gray. That's a cushion color I've got going. So I want that to be one color. So I put it in after it was in the tub with my synthropol. Why do I always do that? It was soaking in there. I took it out. It's 2 large pieces. I had this going with the dye, dropped it in. It kept it moving. So when you're keeping your fabric moving in there, I'm not now because it's already done that. But when you keep it moving, and I can't do it with one hand either because I'm here alone. When you keep it moving, it makes it more even. If you don't keep it moving, it comes out very mottled. So I've got my gray in there. I could put a lid on that if I wanted to, but I like to keep the lid on this steamer basket because it works faster. Now here I've got my casserole dish, and I've squirted in some colors that I like for black. I'm trying to make this a mostly black, so I'm squirting in a bunch more black colors. I've got some others in there, and that's going to end up, if it's not hot, going right into the, woo, that is hot, going right into the oven with the other. And right here I've got a couple different things going. I pre-dyed these. I can't remember which one is wild rose and which one is old rose, but I've already dyed them a little bit mottled, so that means I didn't stir it much. And I pulled them out and I tied them in a knot. Now I'm going to, who's acting up over here? Now it's getting hot in here too. Now I'm going to drop them into one of the dyes. I'll show you that in just a minute, to over dye them, but you can see because they're tied into little knots, when they go in, the inside of the knot is not going to get as much color as the outside. So that's going to give it a subtle tie-dye look. It's going to give it a bit of a mottled look, more like tie-dye and streaky because of all the lines that the knotting has made. So I'm going to show you that in just a minute. Now I can see my dark gray. It's actually dark gray. This is the Cushing dark gray that I was using here. Cushing's perfection. Oh, this is getting hot. I'm moving stuff around. So the dark gray is pretty done, and the way I can tell it was done is if you can see this in between the steam, there's no more dye in the water. The dye has completely gotten soaked into the gray. So I'm going to show you what I'm going to do next with this particular one. What I did was I dumped out a lot of the excess water. So there's only a little bit of water in there now. See that? Down at the bottom. Not a ton. I poured a ton of it in there. Doesn't look like a ton, but it was quite a bit. So now I've got a very low level of water in there, and I'm going to dump some color on top of it. And this color is only going to really sit on top. It will slowly sink to the bottom. So depending on how much time I give it, we'll see how it goes. I'm going to put the lid on this one for now so a lot of the moisture stays in. And when it does, more of that is going to sink down. It's going to get pulled down to the bottom and create something completely unique. See what happens. Over here, these guys are still hanging out in the steam bucket. And you can see, if you can, it's hard standing right in the light. My browns and stuff are showing, but they're not showing enough. So I'm going to want to squirt some more on there. It's hard to do this one-handed. And I'm going to Roll them around a bit. It's hot in there. And make sure that I've got some on the other side too. Now, if you remember that white spotty print that I did, I'll show you in a minute because it's outside. I just redid it for the kit with the topiaries, the bird standoff, the topiary standoff kit. It's not going to come out like that because of the way I'm applying it. I'm doing all messy nessies here, right? It's going to come out all muted and it's going to completely blend. Now these guys are still a to be continued. They are kind of waiting to find out what I want to do with them next, and this is where they're going to go next. So I just put some Cushing rust in the bottom of this pan here, and I'm stirring it up. Don't want it really boily because it doesn't need to. It really shouldn't boil. And when it does, you know, it messes up my little spoons because it gets them all dirty and wet, and then it's really tough getting them clean again. There's the Cushing rust. So what I'm going to do now is, remember these two little pieces I just had, I'm going to drop them in the bottom, just like that. And so half of them is going to turn a bit more rust, and the other half is going to stay that wild rose on top. Now here is the gray from 1 minute ago, soaking in already. And here's the third basket, doing its steamy stuff over there. Now I just pulled this one out of the oven, and this was pre-dyed dark brown Cushing, and I had already squirted on a little bit of black and a little bit of chartreuse, and I'm going to squirt on a little bit of mallard green and put it back. So these are all work in progress things. I'm thinking about my fall colors and what I want to do with my backgrounds, particularly with my primitive type stuff in the backgrounds. Try to get it into the nooks and the crannies. All right, get my oven mitt back on. That's going to go back in. So to be continued on you. So I feel like I ran out of one of the colors I wanted. I've got my black over here, and I like with my antique black to have other colors like blues and browns and pinks. And so I'm over here because I'm out of my replacement for hot pink. I'm going to do a color that's not called hot pink. It's handy to have a little burner here because I have my little designated Pyrex thing going here. And this color is actually called Flower Power. It's this Cushing color, Flower Power Pink, that you hardly ever see. It's a crazy pink, right? So I'm going to take it over here and do some dump-ins. Get a little bit more color in there because I'm not super happy with the colors of that so far. Is that hot? That's not super hot. So that's going to make a difference. Do that here. It's real handy to have a little Pyrex thing going here, a little Bunsen burner going, so you can, and then your squirt bottles, right? Because my intention as soon as that cools off is to put it into this bottle and change the name. Yeah, I'm really liking this color so far. Usually for me, the Cushing colors are not as powerful as the Pro Chems, but this Flower Power is certainly an exception. So again, I can't say enough about this setup of having a stove situation going, especially in summer, but also having like a little Bunsen burner with a kettle on top so that I can use my designated Pyrex cup to put a little bit of my dye in, my powder, and then put the water in. And you know, you figure out the amount, like I know it's like up to here, this line to fill one of these bottles. I have different kinds of bottles, but for this bottle, that's how much it's going to take. You can see how bright this pink is. It's really, really bright. But I'm able to put together a lot of, quickly, as my other things are going on, a lot of little squirt bottles, or sometimes called squeeze bottles. Look for a link to all this stuff below in this video. This stuff is all super cheap on Amazon, so I will always link that. Now I just pulled my pinks out of the steam basket. And I'm checking out the color. It's a really gray day here and not very good light, but I've got my sort of wild rose color. That was my original color. And then I squirted on my mahogany. I have like a mahogany mixed with gold and a little bit of, tiny bit of the hot pink. And remember, I had put them into the steam basket and I just kept turning them over with my hands. Ouch, but it works. And I'm liking the way they came out. It's real hard to see, but they're pretty spotty, and the main colors, they don't look nearly as pretty as they are. The main colors are the old rose. It's like a dusty rose, and a little bit of the mahogany. So these never hit the oven in the casserole dish. When you dye with casserole dishes, it's called casserole dyeing. They go in here like those two guys, and I'm got the oven on about 350 so they don't burn, and that's called casserole dyeing. You know, this is pot dyeing up here. And remember, I've got these two, the different rows in there in the rust color. So I'm going to pull those out now and show you what those are looking like. Now this is what these are looking like. Little dumplings, right, from a Chinese restaurant. It's making me hungry. So I've got the wild rose on top, and then it's more rusty on the bottom. So I'm going to think about that for a while. I'm going to let them sit there for a while. So that water is empty. That's my leftover rust. Now, when people talk about marrying colors so that I'm not showered yet, sorry, marrying colors so that your colors match naturally, this is a good time to think about marrying colors, because I've got a pot that still has this color in it. So if I put another color I want into this color, then what comes out of here, my next color and this color, will be married because they have that color in common. So that would be a good move for me to think about my next bit of wool and maybe drop some of it in there. I could also think about dropping this in here. That's my gray. That's a thought, huh? Let's do that. Let's drop some of the gray in there and see how that works out. Because then we know that in terms of putting them together in the same piece, that gray with that rose and rust will be so-called married together, and thus really, really match and complement each other. Now I pulled the gray with a Tupperware bin out of the thing so that I didn't have to touch it, because obviously it's quite hot. And what I'm going to do to it now, this is the gray that just came out that I want to marry to the other color. I'm going to, it's in my salad spinner, so I'm going to rinse it off and I'm going to spin it to make it colder just so I can handle it. All right, so that's what I'm doing now, is I'm cooling this off so I can handle it better and put it into the rust like the other one. Now, because this pot had the rust color in it, but it had already done these two, it was more concentrated when it did these two. So I have just scooped a little bit more rust, one more tiny scoop, and added it to the existing pot, because I want these to be, these ones, the grays I just knotted, to be just as powerful in the same color as those. So these can now go into the pot. All right. We'll let them sit in there too. I want them to have the same chance and opportunity to get the same color rust that these two got. Now these are awaiting their friends in here that are soaking. I ended up putting the first pinks back in with a squirt of orange that had the mahogany color in it, and I just felt like it would pop the mahogany more. I'm just replacing them, so the gravity thing, I'm thinking about one being on top of the other and soaking down. I thought it would just pop the mahogany more if there was another orange tone that was a little bit brighter. So changed my mind about that. Those are in there. We're waiting to see what goes on with these guys. Now this style of dyeing, squirt bottles, burner, casserole dishes, pots, pans, salad spinner, this is not for everybody. This is not the kind of dyeing you do when you want to repeat your recipe. This is the kind of dyeing you do in the morning on a rainy day when you want to make wool for yourself or for the season. You've got some extra wool and you're fooling around with it, and you want to do some stuff for fun and experiment. This is not the kind of stuff you do when you want to repeat it, because I'm not writing anything down. This is my workshop right here. So this is for fun. This wool is all going to come out beautiful, I can guarantee you. And I'm probably going to use it all and not want to sell any of it. So this is all for fun times. This is just to show you some techniques. Not everything has to be a grind. You know, this wool is going to be as beautiful as wool that has been perfectly measured by Door, you know, when they do their colors. But this is just my technique when I'm not doing kits, is to just do stuff for fun and take it easy, because it's supposed to be fun. Now I just brought a new player into the arena here. I filled this one up. This one was just clear water. It was all done from the last one. It was one of the roses. And I just put cushion gold in here. I'm going to see how I like it. And as you can see, I just dumped 2 large pieces in there, and like over a quarter each. They might even be a half each, but this is a big pan. I set them in there, and I'm not stirring them. I just drop them in, because as you can see, the top is going to be much lighter than the bottom. So I'm going to let them sit like that for a while. This will give them a mottled look, and then I'll make a decision about whether I like that color the way it is, or if I want to even it out or darken it up. But right now that's sitting, these pieces are sitting in a tub of gold. And these are our rust ones doing their thing. And I just flipped these guys in here, so I'll check those in just a minute. These are awaiting their buddies. And I want to remind you that I have already soaked all of this for an hour plus in Synthropol before I started all of this. And inside all of these pans is a little bit of the citric acid. All the links will be below. You can use vinegar, it works the same, but this takes up a lot less room. You just use a tiny bit and it doesn't have a smell afterward. So for me, that's a better choice. It's not expensive, it's worth doing. I also want to remind you that this system, when you have these little measuring things, it's just a little shot glass of salt. I just go like this in between the dye because I do not want to wet these spoons. It's very hard to clean the tiny, tiny little nooks and crannies in them. So I keep this here in the salt, and it cleans itself this way, just grinding it down every time so you don't have to wet these spoons because it will damage them and things will become ingrained. It's better to just dry clean them this way. So these guys just came out of the steamer. And I'm liking the way they look more. I feel like, I don't know if you can tell, but there are some tips of orange in it. I might put a little more orange and put them in one more time. You can see they're quite similar to those. One is old rose, one is wild rose. That's got the rust on it, this doesn't. I probably won't do the rust with this because they already have some colors in common. There's the mahogany that I used is mixed with rust and gold, my squirt bottles. So you can see I am marrying colors here just automatically. You know, based on the colors I already have because they gravitate toward the same colors. So these two colors will go together already. This that's sitting in the rust will definitely go together. We'll decide if we want to make this part of the set or not. I'm undecided. It's looking real yellow. But you know, when you do this kind of thing and you layer, like I did with the gray, you layer color on top and then just let it sit, it models itself. It evens itself out. It doesn't come out in a stark design. It comes out very, very, very subtle. Again, none of this stuff is casserole. Oh, I better check the casserole stuff. Casserole stuff is fine. I'm back over here. And I'm not liking the brightness of that yellow right now because I do want to think about fall colors. Want it to be a little more intense, rich. So I'm going to put these back under with my potato masher and see how they look submerged. Now I'm not stirring them and fooling with them. I'm not agitating them. So we'll see what we have and then we'll make a decision here. Now look who came out. The two dark grays that were mottled with a little bit of black with the rust on the bottom. They are going to go, in my mind, really well with the wild rose back there. That is going to go really well. And I still have some color left in here. Turn that down. And this is my rust, right? It's a little bit diluted because now I've done those in them. But I'm thinking about somebody else who might want to get in the mix there. So I just moved my steamer basket with the pinks here, and I'm loving the way that looks. And that left me with the bucket that the steamer basket was on, right? I moved it from here to here. And now, if you can see through the smoke, there's a color down there, and I don't really know what it is. But what I do know about that color is that it has a lot of this color in it, and it has at least one of these colors in it, because I dyed them in there first. And the colors that I dripped on here, with my bottles that I know are also on here, some of them are in there. So I really don't know what color that is. But for me, working this way and having fun the way I'm having fun right now, being alone and all that good stuff, I'm going to put some wool in there and let's see what color that has become because I have squirted a lot onto that through the steamer bucket. And if any of that is still in there, it's worth seeing what we've got because we know that color will be married to at least two of these colors here. It's worth a shot. So I just dumped a couple pieces. I'm doing 2 pieces with everything today. In here, it's hard to tell what color I've got yet. It is a shade of brown, so I'm going to hang on. It might be that it's so diluted it's not going to do much, but I'm going to wait around for it a minute and let it get some kind of a base going and come back to it. I don't want to give it up just yet. And I got this in there still, a little bit deeper. And let's make a decision about that too. One of the great things about casserole dyeing, I just pulled this one out from before if you remember, is you can fool with it, you know, interminably. So I'm not happy with the ratio of the chartreuse in there yet. So I'm just adding a little bit, it looks more like a lot bit, right? I'm just doing a little bit, a lot bit more. And I'm going to put it back in because I just want a bit more color. It's real hard to tell here, but I really want a bit more color. I might even want a bit more mallard green. Mallard green is one of the Pro Chem colors that I really love. It's kind of a blue-green that's definitely looks like a mallard's back, you know, shining feathers in the sun. I just feel like I need more green to pop this sort of forest primeval type color. So let's see how that works out. Now this gold seems to be where it's at. That seems to be, the water is pretty clear. It seems to be that's what it's going to do. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to dump, I'm not happy with how light that is. So I'm literally going to dump this pan on right on top of that pan. So I'm doing kind of the reverse of this. Instead of dipping of these guys, instead of dipping it, I'm going to dump it on top and see how that goes, because I just, for myself right now, I don't need that yellow color, the true gold. I guess I was thinking it was more like the bronze green or whatever, which maybe I should be popping out too. But I'm going to take the leftover rust, which is a little diluted from the second batch of those, and just dump it on here. So I just did that, and I'm leaving it there. It changed the color of the water a little bit. That burner's on high. It's doing its thing. This is the best I can do right now. I'm leaving it because I want it to be a little bit uneven, and I'm going to see how this works out. It's not a huge change because there's a lot of water in the pot, but let's see how this turns out. I want to show you what I've got over here. Remember, this was the mystery pot? I put this in because it had the leftover of a lot of colors that were in there. Let me see if you can see this. I might have to pull it out better, but it's a really nice, uneven antique white. I'll pull it out so you can see it better. Now, I wonder if you can see how good this looks. It's probably real hard to see. It's got a lot, it looks like parchment, the one that just came out of the mystery pan. It looks like parchment, and I love it. I really love it. I cooled it off so I could handle it, but it's real uneven, and it really looks like, it reminds me of National Treasure, you know, when they find all the old parchments in not crazy places, fun places. But I mean, it's really uneven and it's really nice. It's not as dark as I think it's looking here. It's got bits of tan. It looks like something that you pried up a floorboard of the attic, and there's this thing, and you have to check it out because, you know, the Hope Diamond is wrapped up in the center. Something like that. So I'm not even going to fool with that. I love the way it has colors that are in these. It's married to it automatically because of the rust and mahogany. I'm going to just leave this the way it is because I can always use a sort of parchment antique white. So it started to rain and I pulled in a bunch of stuff I was working on earlier. These are my 2 roses that were in the pan. They're now on the back deck with all the lawn mowing stuff. And I really like the way they came out. It's not really showing great color, but they're very, very rosy. There's a lot of variation to the basic rose color, which was the base color. I can see the mahogany, the rust, and the little bits of orange I put in. I'm really happy with those. And these are my parchments over here. Let me see if I can show you better. It looks like paper, you know, that got real dirty in a good way. It's got a lot of color variation there. I'm real happy with that. These are some little antique blacks that are dying. And if you see over there, that's the replacements for the ones. I'm making more kits of that same one. And for myself, I over-dyed some in like rust because I wanted some, I have an idea for something that has a little bit of that and a little bit of that. So that is basically that, but I dumped it in a rusty color a little bit to give me variation on those 2. So these are some of the things I have going, but this is how that one came out in the mystery pot, parchment, and this is my rose one. Let's see what's happening inside. Now I'm playing games with my rust again. I like the way these 2 came out. The gold is a little bit darker and it has more variation and I like it. So into the gold water, I just dropped a little bit of rust, right? So this is the gold from there, and I turned the burner down because it's steaming and it shouldn't be. And I dropped a little bit of rust. Now, every dyeing book that certainly knows better than me will tell you to always, you know, empty your pot, clear water, starting out again. I'm not doing that because, again, I'm trying to marry colors. There's a little bit of gold in there and there's a little bit of rust in there. So for me, that's going to be perfect. I'm going to get these 2 guys and I'm going to drop them in there just like I dropped the others. And if it doesn't come out great, it really doesn't matter. It's going to come out great. And if I don't like it, it's going to go in here and we're going to do it casserole style until it becomes great. One way or another, these are all going to be beautiful and perfect. So that is, I put into there, that was our leftover from the parchment mystery one. And I left the water and I added a different color. I think it's called old gold. Yeah, old gold, which I'm guessing is different than gold. I just don't remember. and I'm too lazy to look for my Cushing swatches. So let's see what Old Gold brings us. I'm going to put some more wool in there. Now this one just came out, the casserole dish, the one I was referring to as Forest Primeval. I really like this one. It's got a lot of color variation and I'm happy with it. Remember, I added a little bit more mallard green and chartreuse to it, just a few more squirts on top. I think this one looks really nice. I'm going to put it in the salad spinner to dry it out. I'm going to rinse it, put it in the salad spinner, and hang it out, and let's look at it. Now the Old Gold just went in and I'm liking it already. It's a little bit browner, deeper. Remember, it has that parchment color, the mix from under the steamer basket in there too. So let's leave that in there for a little while. I think that's all. Yep. Let's leave that in there for a little while. That's looking good. Yeah, I absolutely love this one. I absolutely love it. It's got so many nice colors in it, and it's going to be great for fall. I did 2 of those. Those are the 2 that came out of the casserole dish that I kept randomly squirting colors on top of, and I just really, really am happy with the way that came out. Now I'm turning this stuff down again. I had this up again because it was off by accident. That's the Old Gold in there, and I'm just leaving that scrunched up so it's not even. I'm loving it. This is the regular golds that we were fooling with rust, sitting in a tub of rust. And I just started this new color, Coral. I really like Coral, so I'm going to drop a couple pieces in there and give it a stir. And we'll see how this one turns out. See if I can do this here. I'm not going for even, so I'm not going to over worry it, but Coral often has, it's such a different tone than Old Rose and Wild Rose. I'm going to turn you off for a minute because I'm alone and I need to stir. See what happens though. These are, you know what, maybe I'll just leave it like that. Maybe I'll leave it like that for a minute and see what happens. And again, I've got little sprinkles of citric acid and everything. I just pulled these 2 out of the rust bath, the 2 golds, and I really like them too. I'm questioning if they're dark enough. I might put them back in for just a minute. I want them a little bit darker on the bottom, but it's hard to tell, but you'll see in the light. These 3 families go together so well. The gray, the wild rose, and the gold mixed with the rust. Now, because I've got to be me, what I did was I want a little less water in there. I want to put these 2 back in to make them a little bit more intense on the bottom. And so I poured a little bit of this rust into the pan with the coral and into the pan with the Old Gold, just a little bit. And now I'm down to a low level here, added some rust, and I'm going to put these 2 guys back in because I just, oop, they're hot. I'm going to do it with 2 hands. I just want them a bit rustier and more intense on the bottom. So now I have shared that rust between these 2 pans. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm much happier with this, the gold with a more distinct rust. It's going to match those. So what I'm going to do now is take those into the salad spinner and make those ready. And over here, I'm about to start another process. I'm going to make a complete color dump into the pot. And I've got my Flavia colored Pro-Chem dye here. And I've got this guy boiling again, so that's going to go in there and do that, and I'm going to literally dump it on top of one of the existing colors. Now, things don't always come out perfect. I'm real happy over here with the way this one came out. It's real even, the gray and the blacks. I'll show you that in a minute. But the other one had less rust in the middle. So I literally, it's one of these guys, I literally unfolded it, and the part that was missing, really missing rust, I just put back into the rust pot. And he's just going to sit in there a minute until he gets with the program and gets a little rustier. Now these are the dark grays with the rust I just pulled out that were like little Cinnabons. And remember how I didn't like the rust on one of them and I dumped it back in? Well, it kind of evened out now. It's pretty even throughout. It's got a sort of marbled look. This was the Cushing dark gray that I added squirts of black to in the steamer basket, and then I did the rust. And I had it all tied up and the rust just got to the bottoms. So it looks like, overall it looks like that. It's very mottled. I really like it. That's what I wanted. That's what I hoped for. I'm really happy with the way it turned out. But you know, if it didn't turn out in a way that I was happy with and I felt like I could use, I could of course put it into the casserole dish all scrunched up, put more rust on it, put more purple. Oh, maybe I should do that. No, let's leave it. This is really good for fall. I could put it in the casserole dish, scrunch it up, put more squirts of color with my squirt bottle, and play with it some more. You know, you do steady as you go, like, you know, the tortoise, not the hare. You can keep adding color. It's a lot harder to get color out. but you can keep adding color and you get something like this. And I really am happy with this for like a fall background, again on a primitive. I'm doing all mottled and different multi-techniques today because I do a lot of solid, and the last 2 months giveaways have been completely solid, except with the exception of the polka dots and the antique black. But you know, when I'm doing solid, my heart like longs for these colors. So I'm doing the colors now that I don't have a project in mind, the multis. You can see from my monkeying around, adding and adding and adding and not dumping, at this point, this rust pot, I've combined it so many times, has a lot of sediment sitting in the bottom. That's not dye, that's just like sediment. So that's not gonna do anything. So I am gonna empty this pot now, the rusty one. I've still got the other gold going. I just took out my antique black. I don't know if you can see, there's lots of other colors in it. I'm gonna let it dry because it just came out of the oven on the casserole dish. I'm deciding if I should shoot more pink into it because I always have a little pink in mine. And I'm getting a color called Red Grape ready right now. Oh, sorry, Violet. I switched to Violet. That's right. Red Grape is next. We're doing Violet in that pot. Now I'm back over here because I was doing stuff with a little burner. I just poured the water into the Flavine Yellow and I was stirring it like this. You can see how intense this color is, the way it comes out on here. Really, really, really intense yellow. And this is what's called a color dump. This is at least what I call a color dump. I don't know if it's got an official name. I've got the gold in there, and I've got my other gold that came out beautifully, and I love it. And this old gold is an even prettier color, I think, and real similar, but I'm going to give it an added something by dumping this right on top. I'm dumping it directly on top. Most of the wool is submerged, and it's going to sink down into the other places, but it's going to give it a different look. And you're going to see that too. It's going to pop it with this extremely bright neon color. It's like a fluorescent. So we're going to see how that works out in just a minute. I'm going to get some wool into the violet pan. Now I'm down in the basement where my supplies are, and I just want to show you, if I did not want to have the mottled colors, right? Like when I put stuff in a pan this size, this is all dyeing stuff down here. It gets mottled. It's not completely solid. If I wanted those larger pieces solid, I would have put them in this thing, which is like a baby's bath, or it's not quite a hip bath. It's a baby's bath. It's a big enamel pan. It's much bigger. It goes over 2 burners. I would have put them in there because I would have had the ability to keep stirring and stirring and stirring so that they didn't sit and become mottled and uneven. This would keep them flowing and would keep them very, very solid. So these are sometimes, this is just a big enamel tub or baby's bath. You can find these mostly on Facebook Marketplace because then the shipping will be the cheapest, or you just go pick it up. Sometimes you see them in antique stores. They're about $50 each, sometimes heading up to $70. So I pulled out the coral. Remember the coral that was over here? I pulled that out and I really love it, right? It looks super mottled. It's got lots of variations of the pink and the coral color. And the only thing I'm thinking is, as I look at our violet back here, I love this color violet. I absolutely love it. And I realize that these two things together look like a bit of a sunset. So I'm actually just going to do this naughty thing and take some out of there and just do a little bit of pouring. It's very, very, very diluted, just to give it more pop, particularly in the later areas. And again, this is not going to change the world by any means, but it's going to give it a little something that I like. I'm going to see what that looks like without the camera in my hand and decide if I want more of that purple in this. This is, again, an effective way of marrying these two colors. You can see this. I added a little bit more of the violet on top of this. So I'm going to put this, it's already in the casserole dish all scrunched up. I'm going to put it into the oven and let that go. It just gave it a little hue of what looks like, oop, dripping, more like evening to me. And sort of depleting that violet pan of its water gives me the opportunity to do another color dump. And I think I'm going to color dump my red grape cushion color on top of that. So I have gotten rid of my sedimentary, my dear Watson, right here. And here's my purple over here. I did a little Pyrex cup over on the other table of red grape, and I'm just pouring this on top. Just layering this color right on top. So that is going to give me a combo of violet and red grape in an unexpected way. We're going to watch this space. Mahogany is one of my favorite cushion colors too. I just dumped some of that in our new pan So we're going to give that a stir and decide how that new wool is going to look in here. Da, 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 da. I'm doing the wedding march because I am marrying colors again. I just pulled the yellows out of here that I'll show you in a minute, and I absolutely love them. That was the old gold sitting with the Flavine yellow in there, and I just added in my Pyrex cup over there at that station a little bit of this Pro-Chem key lime. So it had the color, the yellow color that the last batch, I'm going to show you in a second, it's steaming hot, just came out of this, and I didn't dump it, I didn't dump the water, I added the key lime. So we are going to have two colors that are married beautifully there. I'm going for leafy colors, right? Here's the mahogany getting going. I got some good sugar mapley colors. We're going to look at them all on the back porch. This is my last color here for today. Now I'm loving the way everything's coming out. I just took out of the red grape, remember I had dumped red grape on the violet, steaming away right now, but it's a beautiful color. It's super hot. And I have a little bit of that left, and I'm loving the way the mahogany's looking. Really has the look of leaves, you know, leaves just turning. So that sort of whitish, bright color that you get at the beginning of autumn, which is what I'm going for. So there's just a little bit of diluted purple in there, but I'm going to pour it on here anyway. And this is another good way of modeling. I just poured the remainder of that red grape on top of here, and it's going to soak in top to bottom, so it's not going to be even, and I'm not going to poke at it with my wooden spoon, so it's definitely not going to be even. I got to turn that down now. And over here is our crazy green, right? I just love this. This is this key lime color, and it's mixed with a little of the color before it, the golden color. So I'm going to check this out, the one that had Flavine poured on it. So I'm going to check this out and see if this is too bright for what I want, because I might reverse engineer this one and pour a little gold on this so it matches the ones we have so far better. So what I've done here is I took my super bright leafy green, and I already had a bottle of mahogany mixed with gold, which are two of the colors that I'm using right now anyway. So I squirted a little on there, and I got my steamer basket back into the mix. So that's going to sit in there for a while and do its thing, and I'll reevaluate because I want more of the brown color on that to match the other colors I've got. So now I just flipped these around. I squirted a little bit more of my mahogany and gold squirt onto them, onto the green, and I'm going to let them sit for a minute. And then the next thing I'm going to do, because when I squirt the color in here, because this is a mesh steamer basket, a little of it's going down below to the key lime and mixing. So as soon as I'm done with this, I'm going to actually get rid of the steamer basket and drop them down one more time. I am on the last everything now. I just pulled this casserole dish out. This is the one that I had the coral, and I added a little bit of red grape on top right from the pan. I absolutely love the way it looks. I'll show you later when it dries. This one is busy doing its steaming. This is the steamer basket with the mahogany and the key lime, and I just want to put a little bit more mahogany on there. So it's a bit more even. It's the mahogany and gold. So that's going to sit for another minute. And this is the mahogany that came straight out of the pan, and I love it, but there was some of the violet, red, purple left, so I put it down there with that. I'm going to see how that goes. It's just similar to some of the other colors I have going, and I want it to be similar because I want them all to match each other, but I'm just going to try this and see if I can give it one more little pop. Now I'm just looking over my very hot and steamy steamer basket here with the brown color dumped on top of it, and I am ready for this to just go right into the pot. And what it's going to do in the pot is really mellow. So I put my spoon behind me just now. I'm going to poke that down. It's just going to mellow and soften the brown to the green changes. You're going to see it comes out very subtle and watercolored. I've reversed these here. This is the sort of mapley pink leafy color, the mahogany that I had going, and I had put it into the violet red grape background. And you can see by the pan, there's still water in there and there's really no dye left. So they've done what they can do, and they're like looking like that, which is what we did earlier. And this was an afterthought. This was just, I didn't quite like the color. I didn't think it was different than the others. So I'm trying this, and I'll show it to you unfurled. Again, every time I do something new, I put a little bit of citric acid in the pan. Now I've unwrapped them a bit, and this is what I wanted. They're hot. I'm going to rinse them and spin them in the salad spinner, but just a bit more color, right? Mixed in with the mahogany. That's just what I wanted. It still feels like a fall color to me, but there's a bit more going on. Yeah. One more plot twist. I do love these. I spun them and they look a little different when they're more dry. I want a little more brown in them, so I just made up a little vat of Mummy Brown, and I'm just going to stick them all in there. Mummy Brown is a brown we haven't used yet today, and I really like it. So I'm just going to put them in there for a second and pull them out, and I'll tell you what happens. Yeah, so that is over dyeing. I thought I was done with these pieces. I was real happy with them. I would have kept them, but I don't know, something inside of me is saying, make them a little more brown. They'll be a bit more useful. Because I'm thinking of primitive rugs and autumn and the designs I've got ready. So this is over dyeing. Whenever you dye over something that's already got an existing color, whether it's your own thing like mine that I just made, or it's plaid, something from the thrift store that you cut up, as soon as you put something that's already colored into a vat, you are over dyeing. And over dyeing is as simple as that. It can be an afterthought. It can be something that you plan with your own recipe book. This is my style of over dyeing, today anyway. And I just pulled these out, and I like them a lot better. I'll show you in the light. But it's still got its mahogany and its really bright pops. But with that Mummy Brown, I think it really unified the colors that are in there. I'm really happy with this as a fall color. So the green one came out beautiful. They all came out beautiful. I'm going to show you them in just a minute. I just want to review some of the stuff I used today on this whirlwind dyeing mission. Now I did not use this one piece of equipment, and that is my recipe book. I did not use that. I'm not going to show you, but I used the seat of my pants instead. And this is just a different way of dyeing. Here are my squirt bottles with color. I make them with this and the Pyrex cup that I was using. Here's my salad spinner I use to dry stuff after I rinse it. Here's my steamer basket that I used quite a bit in this video. There's the Pyrex cup. I used these measuring... Why do I always forget what these things are called? It'll come to me. I'll put a link to them anyway in the video. Potato masher I use to push stuff down, obviously, but also pull stuff out. It's hard to pull heavy wool out with a spoon. So I use a potato masher, and I use my thing of salt, my little shot glass of salt, and I clean them off in here. And I just want to review the colors I use. Because I didn't use my recipe book, we cannot create these colors. This is how, this is fun for me sometimes to do it this way. It's like a wrinkle in time. These cannot be recreated. They are like magic. But these are the colors that I used today. Trip down memory lane here. Mummy Brown, Violet, Red Grape, Rust, that was a big one. Coral, these are all the Cushings. Old Gold, and Gold, and Wild Rose, Dark Gray, Flower Power Pink, Old Rose, Dark Brown, and I used a bunch of the Cushings, but these are the main ones. Sorry, I used a bunch of the Pro Chems, but these are the main ones I used today. Now let's go outside and see how everything actually turned out. So this is what we just made together this morning, right? It's just afternoon now. This is what we made. And I love all of these so much, especially together. Not these, I did these last night. I love all of these so much, I'm not going to sell them at all. I'm going to keep them and hoard them, and I'm going to call this A Wrinkle in Time, because I just love this combination. This is what you get when you marry a lot of colors together. You get things that just sing together. Maybe not to your taste, but for me, this is a great fall collection. I have a lot of solids. This is going to really help me beef out my stash with some stuff that is not solid, a little more interesting than solid, to offset all the solids. So let's do a close-up, and I'm going to go one by one to show you what we did here with all of these. Let me sit down to do this. I really love them all. I really love them all. So these are all still wet. This is the most recent one, and it is a really gray day. This is the one that we did with key lime. We dyed it straight into the pot with key lime, and then I decided it was too bright for this collection, so I wanted to break it up a bit. And I ended up adding the steamer basket and tons of little squirts of the mahogany. The mahogany, I think, was mixed with, what was it mixed with? Rust, old gold. It was mahogany and old gold. And remember, I moved it around the steamer basket this way, that way, kept spraying it until I got a really soft blend. A little bit of brownish shadows on the leaf green. Now, this one was the one that we did in coral, and I loved the coral, but then when I saw it next to the red grape, it made me think of a sky. And I remember I dumped the red grape straight onto it, still in the pan, and gave it this kind of a cast. And to me, this really looks like a sky. it looks like dawn or dusk, but I love the shadows of purple mixed in with the coral. It came out, I think, really well as a sky. I'm real happy with that too. Now, this was our trio of cinnamon buns, right? These three. So these are the three that I first dyed. This is Wild Rose, and I twisted it into the cinnamon bun, and then I dropped it into a shallow pan of rust, right? So this has a little bit of rust. This has all rust on the Wild Rose. And I twisted it up, and they look like little cinnamon buns, and it came out like that. This is the dark gray that I squirted. I twisted up and I squirted on some black, and I did the same thing, twisted it up into a cinnamon bun, and I put it into the pan, and shallow pan of rust, same exact thing. Remember, I just replenished the rust a little bit, so there was plenty. This is the third Cinnabon, and this was gold. Remember how I wasn't sure about the gold. I didn't think it was colorful enough. I'm not a huge yellow person to begin with. Turns out I am. But I did the gold, and then I twisted it up and put it into the same pan of rust, added rust a third time. So these were our three from the Cinnabon collection, Collezioni, and they will match together because they all have rust in them. So that will be great for a primitive background. This is one I called Forced Primeval. I don't know why I said that. But I just had the dark brown background, and I put it in the casserole dish. This is a casserole dish, and I squirted it with, remember, mallard green, I think flavine, and possibly chartreuse. I think chartreuse as well, and a little bit of black. And remember, I took it out at least once, if not twice, squirted it some more, all scrunched up, and put it back in, and I ended up with that. And now I'm real happy with that. This is a really good woodsy color. I know I'm going to use it. This is exactly the kind of thing that I use. And then we have, now who is this? This is Old Rose. Yeah, this was the Old Rose. And I loved it, but it didn't have enough color. So I steamer basketed it. I didn't tie it in a knot. I just twisted it, and I put it in the steamer basket. And you remember, I squirted on browns that I had in my squirt bottles and a little bit of orange, and I ended up with a very mottled color because I didn't stir it or agitate it. I let it sit, and then pockets of color settled. So that's the way that the Old Rose one came out. It's a little bit of brown, a little bit of rose. Real happy with that. These are the ones that we've seen so far. Now, this was one of the later ones. This went into a pot of violet, and I loved it, but I wanted a little more of something else. And so remember, I just dumped red grape on top of it. Red grape is the warmer color that you see throughout. Weird light still. But this was a violet, Cushing violet, in the pot, dyed all around, not agitated. But I actually love it when that happens. It gives me something to work with later. Mixed all around, and then the red grape just dumped on top. And you get very uneven distribution of a second color, which is something that I love. Uneven distributions of color, red grape and indigo. So that's that one. Now, this was the parchment. Remember the mystery pan at the back that I didn't really know what was in it, but I knew that some of these colors were in it, and that some must have sunk down through the steamer basket, and I wasn't sure what I would get. And I put these in, and I didn't do anything to it. I didn't stir it or anything. I pulled them out, and they look like parchment. And I was real happy with that because they have many of the colors we've used. So that's our parchment. And then we've got, oh, this was the one that caused some grief. Some neighbor in the background's making all kinds of noise. This was the one that I did in mahogany in the pan, and it came out real uneven, and I thought it was too similar to others we had. So I ended up throwing in some of the indigo. Remember, I just dumped some indigo in there, twisted up. And after I did that, I still wasn't happy with it. Wow. So I put it into a new pan of mummy brown. So it went mahogany, additions of purple in the steamer basket, and then mummy brown over dye. And it came out with a lot of color variation. All fall colors too. This all reminds me of sugar maple stuff I just love. And our last one is this yellow one. And this was the one that was the, not the plain gold, but the old gold and versus gold. And I ended up, it's hard to see it now, this is probably the purest. I ended up wanting to do something more to it. So do you remember, I dumped the Flavia yellow on top of it, just on top of it. And it gave it a lot of color variation. So we end up using, oh, God, no, not me. I am still a dirty little pig. That has not magically changed like a wrinkle in time. That has remained constant. So we ended up with not so much work and with no recipe book, with all of these new colors to use. And yes, some of them are similar. This is the sunset one versus the rust cinnabon one, but I'm going to use them together, and I'm going to mix it up, and I can't wait to cut them. I'm going to probably cut all of these to an 8 because I see primitive all around this. But anyway, I really hope you enjoyed our time together today. Thank you for spending the morning with me, watching all these crazy dyeing techniques, just bits and pieces of all. It makes me think of when I used to watch Rachel Ray when she first came out, and everybody used to make fun of her and call her recipes because she kind of threw different things in and she never really measured, and it was kind of hit or miss. She turned out to be very successful at doing recipes, but that's the style of dyeing that I like to do best. Again, when I don't have to recreate it. I love to do this kind of fast and furious, fairly messy, unexpected dyeing. And, you know, it's for people who like structure. You're not going to like this kind of dyeing. So this kind of messy style of dyeing can be either chaotic or liberating, and it really depends on what you like. But if you haven't tried it, try it. You come out with some beautiful colors. You just can't repeat them. So it makes them all the more magical. Bye for now from Ribbon Candy Hooking, and I'm Deanna. Take care.